Hey guys, so here's how this is going to work. Basically, I'm going to ask some questions, and then we're going to kind of drill down a little bit deeper into some of the answers for these questions. And we're definitely going to leave some time for you guys to kind of ask some of your own. Sound good? There we go.
Test. I have a question about Frogman before we start, because otherwise I won't be able to really think about anything homage related until I address this. So this person just was wearing what? A frog costume?
It's not specified, just that he's a frog man, I think. He could be naked, he could be wearing sweatpants. I don't think I remember hearing about his clothes.
And a wand?
And a wand.
I don't have anything planned for tomorrow, so I was going to get a frog costume and maybe contribute to the legend. Okay. All right.
Are we good? Are we all good on the frogs?
Yeah.
All right. Where did you learn that?
The Go Folk Yourself podcast. They do folklore from state to state in the U.S. Go Folk Yourself.
Okay. Everybody got that?
I'm going to wear clothes though, because I don't want to get arrested. Because then I won't be able to come back next year.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. All right.
All right. So, yeah, that ruined everything. You ruined it.
Or it made everything better.
Maybe. Okay, so let's start here. So it's pronounced homage.
Yes.
We did it.
Yes.
All right.
Or homage, but the H is silent.
That's how listen, this is how I've always said it, and then people think that I'm so crazy. And then I'm like, I'm convinced now by everybody else that I am crazy.
You're not.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Frogman might be crazy, but you're not.
All right, so I guess let's start here. Kind of tell us where homage is today. Tell us what it is. I'm sure a lot of people know, but tell us what it is.
Sure. So we are a 12-year-old clothing company. We have 7 retail stores, 6 in Ohio, 1 in Pittsburgh, and of course the e-commerce site. Where I think we are is we're kind of a hybrid, which is an interesting thing, an interesting place to be in, where initially the brand was very local, very regionally focused in terms of stories that really would speak to the cities that we were in, paying homage to the teams and some of the local culture in those respective markets. And over time, we've kind of increased our national footprint through some licensing agreements with the NBA and Major League Baseball. And where I think that leaves us is a very interesting kind of crossroads, because I think scaling local is very hard. You start out and you think, oh, cool, I'm going to be able to do this in every market. We're going to have this store in every city. But it turns out when you get to those cities, there probably are 2, 3, 4, 5 competing local brands that are all hyper-local, very invested, very integrated into the cities. And so for us to kind of maintain our creative edge, our focus on storytelling, I think the quality of the product can start to suffer, because it's hard to be authentic in markets where you're not from, and more importantly, where you're not, where sort of you aren't living every day. Because the things that are happening in Columbus, you're aware of, you feel them, they're a part of you, and so when you're kind of trying to, I think, be relevant in those other markets, you can kind of get a bit disconnected. And so I think we're having, and I don't want to sort of sound like Debbie Downer up here. I think it's a very good problem to have. I just think it's going to require us to make some difficult choices.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So there's so much I want to say there, but before I go anywhere right there, I want you to kind of take us back to the beginning, when you first made the decision of, I'm going to sell T-shirts.
Well, I was living in my parents' basement.
Naturally.
It was funny at the time. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there, because my mom and dad were annoyed with me. I was annoyed with them, And I probably didn't really have a good reason to be annoyed with them because they had let me take over the entire house. I had my inventory in every room. But now I kind of want to go back.
Yeah.
Things were a lot simpler. And there was food in the refrigerator. And sometimes my mom would do my laundry.
Yeah.
So, things were good.
Whenever you got to this point, like, I'm assuming they thought you were crazy at first. I'm assuming. At what point did they go from thinking you're crazy to, oh my God, he's on to something?
I think once the inventory was removed from their house, they started to, first they breathed a sigh of relief, so that was good. But I think once there was sort of traction with local newspaper articles and we opened a store, which kind of gave life to the brand. You could start to sort of experience the emotional connection through sort of the build out of the store, the posters, the Coke machine. For those who haven't been to our store, we have old school Coke machine. We give out free Coke, which is now costing us a fortune. And my finance people are like, why are we doing this? Because those Mexican Cokes that we give out are like $1 each. And the secret is out. There's like groups of high school kids that always go in there and they don't buy anything and they drink the free Coke and mess up the traffic counters. And no, that's fine. That was very intentional because I wanted the stores to be experience driven and kind of be a dynamic retail place with a sense of discovery. The stores also have NBA Jam on free play, so save those quarters and play NBA Jam at Homage.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
You're answering it, but I'm gonna
something
I'm gonna
related
get
to
you come back
stores.
a little bit
Yeah.
more.
I was romanticizing the good old days in my parents' basement. And I got distracted.
So, I mean, some of the ideas that you had. What were the initial ideas that you had for some of these initial T-shirts that you were doing? Like, at what point, like, was there certain designs that you were like, oh man, like people are really resonating with like these certain things?
Yeah. So remarkably, I think just just printing simple Ohio on a shirt, whether like the block Ohio that we don't sell anymore, but the script Ohio that we do. I mean, that design has probably been around for 11 or 12 years, which is remarkable because it's still one of our best-selling designs. I think it was just wanting to communicate with just very simple typography, kind of a sense of place, without being overly sporty. Of course, also with a super soft T-shirt fabric. So it was funny because the very first store that we sold to was this denim boutique called Dr. Mojo. It's not around anymore. This guy's laughing. He seems excited that it's not around. Oh, great. Well, remember their ad campaign was fashion hurts, but the doctor has the cure. Anyway, so that was the first wholesale account, and I was there one Saturday morning.
How long before you got that first wholesale account?
Okay.
How long was it from when you kind of officially started to getting that?
I mean, that was early on. That was probably year one, maybe year two.
Okay.
My memory is a bit hazy, so hopefully everything I'm saying is correct.
We'll fact check it later.
Yeah. So I had gone to the screen printer so Dr. Mojo had sold out that prior week, and it was a Saturday game day, and I was there early Saturday morning one day before they opened. I brought, I don't know, maybe 100 Script Ohio shirts, and so I delivered them, and the store opened, and literally the first 20 people through the door were there saying, "Hi, do you guys have that shirt that just says Ohio?" And I was like, what is going on here? But I think it was the simplicity of the design really spoke to people, and that taught me a valuable lesson that in terms of artwork and design and storytelling, you don't have to reach for something that's overly complicated. Sometimes simple is better, and of course that reinforces my favorite quote, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, which ironically, now that the business is more complicated, I'm thinking about how to make it simple again. So another valuable lesson.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of moving forward a little bit from there. So how long ago were you saying that was when you were taking them to places?
11 or 12 years ago.
Okay.
So we started in April of 2007. I just remember that date because that's when I went to my dad's friend who's an attorney, and he helped me fill out the LLC paperwork.
Yeah.
So we were just in his office in Bexley, and I paid some $30 fee and started a business.
So then you're seeing some success with this kind of first design here, or first couple. Like, how do you go into the next designs, like, to try to keep expanding it? Like, do you remember that process of, oh, damn it. Somebody's got to get that. I'm not getting down. Okay.
Yeah, so I think the inner merchant / marketer in me causes me to look at not only what we're selling, but why we're selling it. So if, in the case of sort of those Ohio shirts, you could see people wearing them on game day, and not only that, but the customer who's buying them, and sort of leads me to ask those questions and to start to connect dots and connect patterns around what are some other designs that might evoke a similar feeling or response. So I think that's kind of what led us down the continued path of paying homage to collegiate stories, because you were servicing a customer that not only was in school but also an alumni base that looks back with a lot of fondness for those college years and wants to kind of relive those in a way. And at the time, there really wasn't a similar product available. The bookstore business had been very commoditized. You had kind of Hanes beefy tea type quality, really uncomfortable, not soft, not well-designed products for $10 or $15. So there really wasn't anybody hitting that more premium space. So if you kind of, again, back to connecting patterns, recognizing patterns, it's, where could we take our products that other people were not? And what would be similar stories to tell that would resonate just like the ones that I was seeing before my very eyes? And sort of trying to really bring all that information together to kind of guide the vision for what would come next.
Yeah. So.
And of course, the retail environment that we eventually would open in the short north really opened my eyes too. So if you kind of take the product, the marketing, and the presentation of that product in a unique space, a unique retail environment, that led us down a path of opening more stores ultimately, recognizing that we would be in control of the storytelling experience rather than selling to the Dr. Mojos of the world.
Yeah. So then at that point, I imagine that you have your own store. You're like, all right, let's try a bunch of different things now and see what kind of works best. You can kind of see those results faster. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better than being able. So you have this front table in the store, and you can put whatever you want there, and people walk in and they see the front table right away, and they're going to either love it or they're going to hate it. And that was kind of the retail learning lesson, is you let your customers tell you what they like and what they don't like. And believe me, there were plenty of designs that were total flops. Try to get those out of there as quickly as possible so nobody knows. Yeah. But I was convinced, like, oh man, people are going to love this. But I found myself wanting to pay homage to very obscure stories, and it turns out nobody else thought they were that interesting. Kind of like if we wanted to make a Frogman T-shirt, maybe like we'd sell, I don't know, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ben, maybe the 4th. You'd probably buy one. But it was kind of this balance of like, storytelling around things people would recognize and things that they didn't. Because sometimes obscurity can be good. It kind of separates you from everybody else in a sea of ubiquity. But at the same time, you're going to swing and miss, and that's an important part of, I think, the design process is taking chances. Because otherwise, if you just continue with what you know, you're never really getting anywhere, so to speak.
It seems to me that a lot of a lot of the shirts that you guys release or have over the last few years is a lot rooted in nostalgia. How nostalgic of a person do you think that you are?
Very. I think there's just a familiarity and a comfort with the past. Certainly for me, it's very much rooted in childhood, things that I loved growing up. And so we want to sort of recreate that feeling of being a kid again, of simpler times. Obviously, there's quite a bit of romance there, but there's always comfort and security with the past because it's known, and the future is a scary place. So I find that digging into things that people love is a great way to connect on an emotional level with them. And so nostalgia not only is something fun, it's a really fun sandbox to play in, but it's also can be quite lucrative too from a business perspective. So definitely has its perks.
Yeah. Okay, so as you're building this company, I'm making assumptions here, but you're seeing a lot of similar businesses popping up, probably like 100 or 2 of different people that are starting t-shirt companies, also kind of rooted in nostalgia. What is kind of your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, initially I was annoyed, probably pissed, but I don't own the things that we're releasing. I just like them, and some of the brands that would pop up were doing similar things out of a similar passion. You'd see we'd come up with certain marketing hooks. On an anniversary, something happened in 1976, we might discount the shirt to $19.76. Just, quirky marketing, things like that. And then I'd see competing brands doing the exact same thing, and I know exactly who did it first. Or I'd see, we started doing a neck label, sew-in neck label, and then I'd see brands doing a similar neck label. We started to put H patches on the sleeves. I'd see brands start to, do their version of the patch on the sleeve. So I mean, deep down, I know they're looking at us because we're setting a standard. At the same time, I think that's a very important lesson in business and can be a driving and motivating force to continually innovate and push the envelope, because as soon as your idea is released, it's sort of out there for everybody else to see. And ultimately, I mean, I think if you can sort of channel it properly and not let it get to you, and not be hyper competitive, which I can be at times, you realize it's sort of it's flattering. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, I think my mom told me. So it's fashion is very derivative. I mean, I didn't invent the T-shirt. I mean, people are selling T-shirts long before us. So you kind of have to balance it too. Like, did I really come up with that, or do I own that, or how's that work? So yeah. I mean, it's just a fact of life. It's a fact of business. I think when your product is out there enough for people to see, you're inevitably going to invite that sort of flattery, if you will.
So over time, though, at the same time this is happening, you're also seeing celebrities wearing your shirts. You're seeing LeBron James walking off an airplane with the Warriors shirt on. What was your reaction to that, first of all?
Sort of disbelief. I was actually in San Francisco visiting a friend and his wife at the time that happened, and I was, just walking around and I'm like, hey, did you see LeBron? And of course, there's Warriors fans out there. So I'm like, did you see LeBron? And they're like, oh yeah, blah, blah, SOB, blah, blah. I was like, okay, well, that T-shirt, we make that shirt. Yeah. For those who don't know the story, the Cavs were down 3-1 to the Warriors in the NBA Finals, and they came back and won. And then LeBron got off the plane when the plane landed in Cleveland, holding the NBA championship trophy, wearing one of our licensed WWE T-shirts of the Ultimate Warrior. So in a way, LeBron was trolling the Warriors. So it delighted a lot of Clevelanders and angered a lot of Golden State Warrior fans. But for us, I think also that was a turning point too, because people were kind of like, it sort of to, like from their vantage point, it seemed very strategic, like somehow we had coordinated that. And I don't know how he got the shirt.
Honestly, I thought you did at first, and I was like, genius.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, it made us look like we were really like, people were like, whoa, they've got some kind of relationship with LeBron James, but it was completely organic. And, you know, we think, Elliot, our licensing and biz dev guy, sent a box of wrestling shirts to the Cavs, just to the team, and maybe they got distributed that way. We're not sure. It turns out that a lot of Cavs players like wrestling. So an article came out much later talking about how they were kind of summoning their inner superhero being down 3-1. A precursor to that Ultimate Warrior shirt is LeBron was wearing, on the brink of the Cavaliers season being over, on the brink of death, so to speak, he was wearing an Undertaker shirt. So that happened first, a couple days before, maybe a week before, and then the Ultimate Warrior shirt. So we came to find out that the Cavs players love wrestling. So it was very fortuitous.
Huh.
And certainly put us on the map in a way that I think, maybe we could have earned organically, probably not. I mean, something like that is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. I mean, I don't know if people will ultimately know the brand of the shirt, but they definitely will know the moment.
Yeah.
So people definitely remember that moment. So to think that our company is sort of embedded in a moment of sports history is really incredible.
For sure. I mean, I think that was one of the most iconic parts of everything, is like seeing him walk off that plane and seeing that. I think it's super cool. Getting back to kind of more the business side of things. Was there, from the point you started to where you are now, was there any like big moments where you're like absolute huge failure, like definitely probably shouldn't have done that? Any kind of moments like that?
Yes, quite a few. How much time do we have?
45 hours.
Okay.
Oh my
Well,
God. We got
24 minutes. Okay.
yeah.
I'll
Well,
try to.
yeah.
No, I'll be brief. From failures is always, it's one of the best learning lessons. So hopefully, if any of my failures or learning lessons can be valuable to you, that would make me very happy to know that somebody is learning from kind of our hardships. So I think one of the something very clear to me now that wasn't clear to me at the beginning was, or is rather, I think hiring friends, working with friends can be kind of a double-edged sword where it's sort of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. I think, in business is great. There's a tendency to sort of lean on the people that you trust, i.e. your friends, and you kind of know them, and the business is growing, and it's a scary world out there, and so you can hire your friends. And I think looking back, I don't want to say don't do it under any circumstance. That's a bit absolutist, but I think be very cognizant of sort of integrating a friendship in a business relationship. I think that can really alter the course and the state of a friendship. So I don't know if anybody has started a business or is in business with friends. I'm seeing faces like, oh shit, I hired my friend last week. What am I going to do? And you think it's never going to happen. You think like, we're not going to get into a fight, or we're never going to disagree, but guess what? It happens. So there's that. A second lesson is I've always been one who's sort of driven by what's next, always trying to like reinvent some new idea, and kind of I can be lost in a sea of ideas at times. And what I didn't recognize is that while I'm out dreaming up something new, if you're not very clear on where you are and where you're going, as in like tomorrow, that can be a problem, because without today, there is no tomorrow. Maybe Wexner said that. I don't know. I've read it somewhere, but it's true. It's very simple, but it's very true. I think one of the hardest parts about growth is you're sort of rooted in the future, but you also need to be grounded in the present. And for a while, I was kicking myself about that, and then I was just recently finished Howard Schultz's book about returning to Starbucks, and he talked about and made me feel a lot better about the mistake that I'd made. He was talking about how he was very focused on brand and kind of front-end stuff, and ultimately one of the big areas that had gotten Starbucks into trouble was a lack of focus on the operational side. So Starbucks, back in '08 was opening all these stores, and the company had just gotten way kind of out of sync. And so he mentions in his book that he was naturally drawn to areas that he liked to do, i.e. brand stuff, and was not laser focused on things like operations where he didn't have an interest. And I kind of see a parallel to my story in that, and I was always fascinated by some wild, wacky idea and not focused as much on the present and managing our cash. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Make sure you, for the creatives out there who don't naturally kind of have an interest in the cash, which is like myself, because it's like you just think, oh yeah, there's going to be money in the bank, whatever, we'll be fine, we'll figure it out. Make sure that you get somebody and get a team of people who really are going to be laser focused on the cash. People gave me that advice, and early on, I didn't quite click. But now it's definitely clicking, or has clicked. So that was another important lesson. I think the third lesson is, it's not to say that there's only three, but number 3 for today is when it comes to partnerships and kind of investors, I think it's very important to be aligned on what the shared goals are and what you're trying to build together. Because certainly in the beginning, things are great, seems like great idea, but I think it's very critical to make sure there is a shared alignment and a shared vision for go forward, and not to, again, be overly negative, but I think a good bit of advice is hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Which when you're a creative type like me, you're just rooted in big ideas for the future, and you're not thinking about what could possibly go wrong. So those are three lessons that hopefully will be helpful to people out there.
I think those are great, man. I guess what I want to know is, first is did you think that this would happen? From the beginning, going back to being in your parents' basement, did you envision in your head that this is what it would be today?
Probably not. I mean, I think I was just always so focused on what's next. What's the next task? What's the next responsibility? What do we have to do to grow? And then somehow, probably happened 8 or 9 years in, I kind of had this moment of, whoa, what has been built here? And it was a variety of emotions. It was certainly pride and excitement, but it was also maybe, I don't want to say sadness, but certainly some feeling of what was once a hobby and a passion is now this business, and there are employees coming to work every day who are incredible, who work very hard, and I'm looking out in the parking lot and I'm seeing these cars and I'm going, holy shit, these people need to get a paycheck. I've got to provide for them. I have to make sure we're making all the right decisions. And I kind of froze. Like I had just a wave of panic and anxiety because there was just this pressure to deliver. So, in the beginning, kind of that first, 6, 7 years, 8 years, it was all creatively driven, passionate, tons of energy, and then somehow things just changed. They just shifted. The stakes were higher. And I think we are maybe programmed to think like, okay, every time we start a business, we've got to get really big, and we've got to grow it and grow, and that's sort of the mindset. But now when I see independent business people who are, it's just them, or maybe it's them and a couple staff, and it's a business that's a passion, and it's kind of, there's, not to say it's not without growing pains and stress, but it's a much different scale, and I'm a bit envious of that, because I think somewhere along the way things became complicated, and the what was once a passion was no longer a passion. It felt like kind of a burden. So that's another advice. I guess nugget number 4 is it's very natural as a creative. What comes easy to you is a passion. You realize, or you think, wow, I can monetize this, or I'm gonna start a business around this, and that can be great. But it can also be sometimes that flame can extinguish, and so sometimes maybe it's best just to keep the passion a passion and not, I guess they say don't mix business and pleasure, but so I learned that as well.
Yeah. So over this amount of time, like thinking back on like kind of who you were before you started the business and kind of who you are now, in what ways has kind of the success of Homage kind of changed who you are? Like everyone always says, like, if I'm successful at something, it's never going to change me. I'm curious, like if you feel like it has changed who you are.
I think that's a great question. I think at the core, I'm still the same person. I think what has happened is that core is maybe buried a little bit, harder to find, because you can lose yourself a little bit. I think this, underneath the weight of the stress and the anxiety at times, there is that person. But early on, I was very happy-go-lucky. Like nothing bothered me. I was just, it's like, oh, I have this T-shirt idea. Let's do it. Now it's like, oh, okay, we have a T-shirt idea, and got to get like 16 people to approve it, and get everybody on board. And okay, everybody, here's the plan. And this is why we're doing this. And so you have this very independent spirit. I think that early on was really central to my being. Of like, I'm sort of I have an idea and I just do it. That's very much how I'm wired. Now it's like, you have an idea and you kind of, that freedom to create and pivot and do weird, quirky stuff, kind of goes away a little bit, because you've got to be more structured and more rigid. So I think what's the word I want? The structure of things has sort of changed my creative process. Things aren't as fluid and organic, and I can't like turn on a dime. So I've got to develop new passions and pursuits where I can be that way and not feel burdened or bogged down by a structure or a hierarchy, which is ultimately, it's funny because I thought early on like, oh, we're never going to have like all these layers. Like I'd always look at larger corporations and think like, oh, those are so bureaucratic, and how do they get anything done? And we're always going to be like super nimble and super dynamic, and then suddenly, you just have more people. And it's not to say that more people are it's a bad thing. I mean, it's a sign of growth. But with more people comes a need to communicate, a need for alignment, and you're going to naturally just, numbers alone, you're going to have differing opinions. And the conversations can be contentious, can be, so I think the more people sometimes is, the added pressure to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple more questions, then I want to kind of open it up to you guys for a little bit. I guess a simple question: where can people find out more about Homage?
Well, I guess, should I plug your podcast?
You can if you want.
Okay.
I mean, you'll find one episode about it.
Yeah. So probably our social media would be a good place to check in. Some of that quirky storytelling is still visible there. Just, like our social media guy's a goofball at heart, and so he's always posting random stuff on Instagram or Twitter. We have a lot of, so our product release cadence is pretty pretty aggressive. So there's always something new coming out, which can be good. So like the new arrival section on our site is a good place to tune into what we're doing. I've been thinking a lot about content and storytelling and how we might start to pivot a little bit away from kind of a product-only business and really start to leverage story in a new way. I mean, certainly the shirts themselves tell a story, but I think there's other stories to be told. So we don't have the content portal yet, but maybe in the future. Yeah. So that will be a place to find out more about Homage.
Okay, so this might be a difficult question, but where do you see, I know you said that it seems that you're a very process-oriented person who does the next thing and you kind of get somewhere in the end. Shit, what the hell was the question? God, I was doing so good, guys.
Sometimes I'm process-oriented, sometimes I'm not. But
like...
Because like when there's a process, it can be kind of rigid. Sometimes there's just like free-flowing creativity can lead you to really cool, unexpected ideas. So where do you see Homage going in the next 5 to 10 years? Well, I think we need to really think about who we want to be when we grow up. And again, I kind of led off with this conundrum, and it's not a bad thing. It's just kind of the product of growth and change. But really understanding, do we want to be a kind of a regional business, or do we want to be more of a national business? And I think there's a rub there, because the stuff that is really meaningful and resonates here kind of locally or even in the state of Ohio may not matter to somebody from Montana, maybe. Maybe it does, but... and so there's sort of this pressure, like, we have NBA teams from all over the place reaching out, and they want Homage product, and it's an honor to work with them, and it's amazing to pay homage to their team traditions and moments that are important to those franchises. But it's like we're having to say no to people, and that's weird too, because I'm always like, well, let's take that order, and then my team's like, well, we're really busy, we can't design anything else, and our production is backed up, and so having to pick and choose opportunities is really hard, and we're having to sort of make that adjustment in real time. And so I think understanding where, what we want to be, because I think where we have been is great, but I think the hard part is going to be we may have to give up some things that we're very accustomed to in order to move into things that are bigger and better and have more kind of national appeal. And that's the pressure to grow. I mean, like you think you're not going to, when you first start the business, you think you're not going to have to make these tough choices and you're not going to have these external pressures, but they're very real. Because you can't just continue doing what you have been doing because somebody will come in and try to eat your lunch. And so, like I said, from a regional perspective, there's a lot of businesses that are doing an amazing job of local storytelling, and I think for us, the national storytelling opportunity is very real and very could be very lucrative. So we're going to have to make those choices.
I love that, man. So before I go to questions, I really just want to say I really appreciate your honesty up here, and I'm sure everyone else does too. I think it's real easy to kind of come up here and just be like, everything is great. But like I really appreciate just kind of like really kind of driving a little bit deeper into that kind of stuff. I think it's really cool and insightful for everybody.
Yeah, I don't like faking things, so I'm kind of stressed. It's probably based on the last 45 minutes of my Q&A. It's probably not a secret,
I think
but
it's great,
it's like there's that's another thing too. Like I think CEOs are, and I'm technically the CEO on paper, but what I've learned about myself is maybe that's not the best role for me as the founder and creator. I don't respond to pressure and stress well, but there are people who do, or at least do it better. And so I think learning about who I am and what makes me happy and what I'm good at is very much a part of this process. And I think other business owners out there have probably experienced something very similar. So, like I said, I try not to fake things. I try to be honest and transparent, and have a lot on my mind, and a lot of changes at the company, a lot of growth challenges, and some big decisions ahead. So.
Yeah.
And a lot of learning lessons too. So that's why I wanted to share, be as honest and straightforward as possible, and share those, and hope they're beneficial to you guys.
Sure, man. So let's go to some questions here. Let me jump down. Myself. All right.
So I actually work on an embroidery machine, but I'm familiar with like the industry you're in, and I was wondering like, what problems did you run into starting off? It looks like your shirt now is like more of a sublimation versus screen printing, and what like I know it gets real hairy when you mess up one shirt.
It's a screen print.
Oh, it is.
But
okay.
but where you're going is right on the money. But I'll let you finish the question. But I think you're spot on.
What did you run into? Because I know there's a lot of issues, and you can mess up one like really high end shirt, and you make no money off of an order or something like that. So how are you like, do you just have someone else print it for you so you don't have to worry about it, or where are you going with it?
Well, I mean, I think like you. So just a bit of context. So he said it's a screen print, but it looks like a sublimated print. Sublimation is a digital printing technology, and it's kind of like to contrast that with traditional screen printing, where actually there's somebody out there with a screen printing setup.
Yeah, Upright was out there.
So if you want to kind of on your way out see what that looks like, but the digital printing represents this. We're kind of like at this divide with regards to technique, product quality, efficiency, in the sense that now you have the choice of printing things digitally one at a time, so you're not tying up your inventory. Because where you're going is, if you're embroidering, you're screen printing a batch, and like there's a piece of, there's a string in the squeegee and the design gets messed up, you've you've misprinted like, I don't know, 12 shirts, and it's like there's just money down the tubes, and you're annoyed. Screen printing is sort of like, if as a purist, I love screen printing. It delivers a certain hand feel and texture and experience that is unique. Digital printing is it's harder to capture the vibrancy with that technology, but at the same time, from a cash management perspective, do you want 48 units screen printed on a shelf? It's like there's your money tied up right there. Or do you just want to, digitally print one at a time, knowing that digital printing may not deliver the same quality as screen printing, although the technology has really evolved over the past 10 years. Like when I first saw digital printing, I thought, oh man, we're not going to do that. Looks like a muddy, faded out print. Now the digital printing is pretty good. So if you go on Amazon, for example, and you type a license, if you're looking for a NASA shirt or, I don't know, Coke or Ren and Stimpy or something, chances are those shirts that you're going to buy are digitally printed on demand. There may not be inventory. And so the technology is really bringing us to a crossroads as far as what, I don't want to say what we stand for, but what is the product that we want to deliver. Exactly, right. So part of paying homage is doing things, screen printing in a very traditional way, delivering a certain hand feel, versus digital printing, which is providing a ton of cost savings and efficiency and just a whole new logistical back end. And so, you're having to make kind of that tough choice of, which direction to go in. Because I'm walking down our warehouse and there's racks, there's shirts everywhere, and I'm like, oh, okay, how much money's there, how much money's there, how much money's there? And suddenly you have all this inventory, and you're like, wow, that's where all our money went. So you kind of have to figure out, what's going to be the path forward. So that's a great question, because I think that's very front and center in terms of where we go from here.
Cool. Who else we got here? We got time for probably a couple questions. You're pointing at her. It's like a double.
What are some of your passion projects that didn't work out, and would you revisit them in the future maybe? Or how did you do differently?
Yes. Well, I think my passion projects are best reflected by the domains that I've registered, but I have not developed. So I don't know, who people, every time they have an idea, I'm going to buy the .com, and just kind of sits there, and then GoDaddy's dinging the credit card every 2 years. And we don't actually do anything with the site, but I have some interesting sites. I bought turtlenecks.biz because I thought one night I would have the world's largest turtleneck superstore. Have not done anything with that.
Are you really passionate about turtlenecks?
Kind of, yeah. Very functional, very stylish. It's really... It's everything that you could possibly need in one garment. And then I thought, this is kind of funny. We could have the Steve, right? So we'd have the black turtleneck in honor of Steve Jobs. We could have the Liz for Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes. She's in the documentary, HBO documentary, wearing a black turtleneck. Although that's an homage to Steve Jobs, so I don't know what we do there. So, there's just a variety of turtlenecks out there that I thought would be interesting to make. Around Christmas time. You're looking at me very skeptically. Okay. So turtlenecks.biz, the world's largest turtleneck superstore. What other domains do I own? Probably some that I shouldn't share.
If you own them, then it should be a problem, right?
Sure. Hold on, I got to think about this. Themes? Oh yeah, that's a good idea, because if I tell you the domain, I'm kind of telling you the business model. I'm not a father myself, but many of my friends and peers are fathers, and so one of the themes is around badass dads, baby on board in the front, but they're still like cool dads. So like, how do you reconcile like cool dad and still like, or being a dad and still being cool is kind of that, like, a friend of mine has a station wagon that's all tricked out. So we call it the dad wagon. So I was like, okay, there's probably something to this, something funny, something that would resonate with people. Because like becoming a parent doesn't necessarily, it's like your cool factor doesn't go away, even though it might feel that way. So we kind of want to preserve the best of both worlds. So that's another theme. There's many more domains. I'm just blanking on them.
Honestly, I think that.
You think that's enough?
She got so much value from that
Yeah.
question.
But just like personally, I still like clothing. I just, I think maybe like trying to not have so many choices, like a lot of inventory, a lot of choices, a lot of themes, a lot of teams. Like it just becomes a lot to maintain. So I think in the future, having something that's just a lot simpler, like simpler messaging, might be better. I don't say better, but just different. So that's kind of where my head's at. Again, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So,
Love it.
turtlenecks.biz. If only I had the site up right now, I probably would have had like 5 orders. Just
Seriously.
oh yeah.
Just put like a PayPal link at that
Yeah.
URL right there. And
Yeah.
Like, maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Pre-order, delivery, maybe never.
Probably never. I'm gonna go over here. Maybe a couple more questions depending on how long.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about licensing. How does that work? How do you get permission from, say, Ohio State to print a shirt versus, not printing from another university?
Right. So colleges typically, so collegiate licensing is kind of one path. Like the collegiate licensing, for example, is going to be very different from NBA licensing. Just because NBA licensing, you're going to get the whole league, whereas collegiate licensing, you don't like just fill out a form and get all schools. You have to go school by school. So typically, schools will either outsource their licensing to a third party, or they will run licensing internally. So depending on the school, there might be a sort of internal licensing program where you would fill out an application, you would give your business plan, you would show them that you have liability insurance, you would share samples, you would, demonstrate some interest from buyers in the marketplace. Like, for example, Ohio State, getting the Ohio State license, it's one of the most difficult collegiate licenses to get. So I was actually rejected the first time I applied for Ohio State. I didn't realize how competitive and how difficult it was going to be. So I had to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out what the narrative was going to be as far as the pitch. But you're really kind of putting together an application, a body of work, a business plan, and you're presenting it to the school. And there's a small fee attached to it. But if you're interested in collegiate licensing, I think there'd be 2 things to consider. One, the category. So like if you want to do the official Ohio State shower curtain, there's a greater likelihood of you getting that license than there is apparel, because apparel is a hyper competitive category. So I don't know, are you thinking about this? You're just curious? Oh, okay.
I had just wondered, we went to Kent State and we'd go in and there'd be Ohio State shirts but not Kent State, or I just wondered how that works.
Oh,
Why
yeah,
do
I
you
mean,
have some schools and not others? Or?
Yeah, well, you mean like why we have certain licenses?
Yeah, why you?
I think demand. Yeah. It's always hard because like people on social media are like, where's the Capital University stuff? So finally we did it and we sold like 8, so it seemed like there were about 1,000 people asking on social media, and then when we actually did it, yeah, well, they had like 1,000 fake accounts or something. So, it's a good question because, for example, like a fan base like Ohio University or Miami, for whatever reason, is more, I don't want to say engaged, but more, we've had more success with those schools than we have like Kent State or Bowling Green. So I don't know if it's alumni base or it's hard. It's also for us, it's your marketing strategy too. It's like, how do you want to connect with those fan bases? If you're the local bookstore on campus, you have this built-in wave of people, parents and siblings, and so it's like people are visiting that sort of quintessential bookstore. But it's a good question. I think college licensing is very fragmented too, whereas like if you want to break into a market, like let's take like Texas, University of Texas, which is like, Ohio State's 1 and Texas is 2. Like if you want to go to Texas, like you can't just do like 3 Texas shirts. Like you've got to be all in. So like it's such a concerted effort to go all in. Like, you might have to do like 30 Texas choices. So for us, like it's been easier to do like maybe a handful of Ohio colleges with 2 or 3 choices versus to go to some, larger program and try to, be the be all end all. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for. Just kind of some background on collegiate licensing.
All right,
Yeah.
So let's do like some really quick questions here. Like I see a big hand over there. While I'm on my way over there, how many shirts do you have in your closet?
Me?
Yeah.
My own or
Yeah, your closet.
probably like 50. I just wear the same shirts I wear the same clothes every day. I'm kind of weird like that. I just wake up and I have a lot on my mind and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just wear these shorts. May or may not have worn them yesterday. But I do put on clean underwear and t-shirt every day, so.
Sure, yeah, okay.
Mark Zuckerberg is in this hoodie sweatshirt every day, and Steve Jobs wore the turtleneck, and Barack Obama always wore a gray suit. The general manager of the Browns always wears the same thing. People talk about like, it's just like that simplicity is just easy. It's like you're just trying to eliminate unnecessary choices, which is ironic because I sell clothing, so you'd think I'd like wear a different outfit every day, but I don't. So.
Nice. Okay. Last question.
So with a company with an impact like Homage, right? I'm interested in when you got started. With the great idea, you had talked about having the right money people there. Where did you get your money to get started? Did you have seed funding? Did it get a loan?
Let's see. I just had some credit card debt. And I had a wholesaler that gave me a line of credit. So I was kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. There was no, there was no established body of work, so I couldn't exactly, there wasn't a coherent business plan to present and like a revenue history and a sales goal. It was just an idea. So I was just buying blank T-shirts from the wholesaler and screen printing them and selling them. I was in, this is quite frequent. I had another side business. I was selling vintage clothing, so I was taking all the money that I was making from the vintage clothing and putting it towards Homage to fund it. So it was kind of a hybrid financial model, which sounds really sophisticated, but it's actually not. Just good old-fashioned credit card debt. Yeah.
Very nice. So thank you all for being here. And if you want to know more, if you want to listen to more of these podcasts, which I'm pointing to the screen.
Yeah, let's plug the podcast.
It's blank right now. So we're like 8
Matt,
episodes in.
Tell us about your podcast.
Oh, we don't have time for that.
Matt,
It's dinner time.
What are some learning lessons from the podcast?
I'll tell you this, that I think that a lot of people, this is going to sound so shitty. I think a lot of people ask a lot of bad questions whenever they have good people to get answers in front of them. And I think that part of it, I don't know, like, I didn't want to ruin this opportunity by asking just like generic questions, softballs, you know what I mean? You have this knowledge that maybe you don't feel like is something that's important, but like, I think that there's like so many little bits of what you gave us today that I think anybody can take away something really important from this. And to me, that's really the most important thing, is to not just have another generic podcast, to do something that we can really figure things out. And a lot of times it's watching people figure things out while you're talking to them. And to me, that's super cool. Is that a good answer?
Yeah.
It's great.
So
I'm going to check out your podcast.
You should. You'd be the 8th subscriber, I believe. Listen, I just started a couple months ago, but if you want to subscribe, it's Creating Business. It's on iTunes, Spotify, a few other things that I can't remember, but just look up Creating Business. All right? Awesome. All right, so let's hear it for Ryan.